All right, looks like we are just about live at this time. Good afternoon to everyone. I know we're about 3 minutes behind, but that's okay. We're still going to have a very informative and exciting exploration session today. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's executive webinar on the Jamaica Business Fund. I know this is very new to a couple of you, and we're going to be explaining all of it, all of the benefits, how it can help our small and medium enterprises in Jamaica. So you're going to get all the details from the person, the man himself, who's going to break it down for us. All right, so thank you so much for joining us and spending this next hour with us as we go through a couple of things. My name is Amashika Lorne, and I will be your host for today. So the first person that I'm going to invite to give some greetings is the program manager for the Jamaica Technology and Digital Alliance. Her name is Alexia Beckford. So Alexia, we're going to have you give some greetings as to why we're all here today.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's our pleasure to have the development of Bank of Jamaica here with us, explaining what is the Jamaica Business Fund. And the Jamaica Business Fund to us is super important in guiding SMEs because we believe it's going to change the business landscape of not only Jamaica, but the Caribbean. And we are excited because we know we have many entrepreneurs who always want to expand not only in the Caribbean, but Latam, in the Latam market. So we are excited to hear from Chris to see how you can apply and utilize what is being offered by the Development Bank of Jamaica. We hope you're taking notes. It will be here. And we hope you can learn about the cluster and the partnerships in building out the space, the Caribbean landscape, and also to grow your business. Thank you so much, Chris.
All right, and just for everyone, we're now going to welcome Mr. Christopher Brown. He is the program manager for the BIGEE project at the Development Bank of Jamaica. So today we're going to be exploring the Jamaica Business Fund. How are you feeling, Chris?
I am doing well. I'm doing well. Happy to be here.
All right, well, we're going to now allow you to do a presentation, and then at the end of it, we will do some question and answering with you. All right? So
Not a
take it
problem.
away.
Thanks. Can I get the slide up, please? All right. Afternoon again, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Christopher Brown. I manage a project at the Development Bank of Jamaica called the BIGEE program, which is really about supporting innovation and entrepreneurship in Jamaica. One of the products or the programs that we have at the bank, which is beneficial to SMEs, is the Jamaica Business Fund. So I will take you through what that is, who is eligible, and then we can open it for questions to really see how this product can impact you as members of the JTDA. I'll really start by saying this is the sixth round of the Jamaica Business Fund, and primarily the industries that we've received applications from have been in agriculture. We're trying to see how we can diversify that. Jamaica's economy is not just agricultural based. A lot of services contribute to what we deliver locally and globally as well. And we think the JTDA is a prime group of businesses that we think should be able to take advantage of this opportunity. So I'll jump right in to what the business fund is. So it's really about strengthening supply chains and business clusters so that we can have greater economic output out of Jamaica. We offer up to 300,000 US dollars per cluster to implement projects that are really aimed at improving productivity, or enhancing competitiveness regionally and internationally. And then a key thing to just understand about the fund is we expect that the fund or the cluster would have a minimum of 4 registered companies. And I'll describe a bit more what cluster really means. So we're saying what we want is a group of companies who come together with a common idea. There is probably a specific opportunity, again, whether locally, regionally, globally, that through shared resources, expertise, they can create a specific product or service to offer to a particular market. So I would expect that individual members of the JTDA have their respective markets, their respective clients, and maybe in your day-to-day operations, you recognize that there is an opportunity, but on your own, you couldn't take advantage of that. So what we're encouraging is clustering, groups to come together to put their resources together to go after a particular opportunity. There are two different types of cluster relationships that we typically see and will support with the Jamaica Business Fund. The first is the horizontal cluster. So that's what I was mentioning about, like companies coming together to work on a particular opportunity and offer a joint product or service. Or there is a vertical cluster, which is typically more understood in product related industries. So let's say you have a final product and you need particular inputs to go into creating that final product. A simple example is like pepper sauce, for example. The person who distributes pepper sauce sells that. Typically, the supply chain starts with farmers who create pepper. There's probably a processor somewhere in the middle that mashes the pepper, probably creates the sauce itself, and then there's the distribution. You can think of that in a similar way. You can have similarly replace the product that I mentioned to a service. You could have a main buyer at different levels of the supply chain or the value chain. But whichever one of those two constructs exist, or your relationship, we would be willing to support you as a group. In terms of costs, so the 300,000 US that I mentioned would really count as 70% of the project cost. So let me say that works out to be about 450,000 US is what we'd expect the entire project would be. You would need to put up you as the cluster, the group, would need to put up 150,000, and then we will provide a grant of 300,000 US dollars. Again, it's relative, so your project doesn't have to be 450,000. It could be a $300,000 project for which you put up 70% of that, which is 210, and you would need to find the balance as your counterpart. Again, it's a joint effort between really the government deciding and the development bank deciding to pump resources into an opportunity, but it needs to be a joint initiative where the private sector, yourself, really contribute to that as well. We have some special windows in terms of the cost share, and that's particularly where there are women-owned businesses in the cluster. So if half of the 4 members of the cluster are women-owned, then you can get an 80% cost share. So we would fund 80% instead of 70. And if it is 100% women-owned, we'll fund 85% instead of 70 or 80. So there are incentives for our women-owned businesses to really, 1, participate in clusters, and 2, have clusters of your own, right? And it's really to diversify the mix of who offers services to the market. The business fund really looks at all industries, sectors. As I mentioned, agriculture is what we've primarily funded. There have been some tourism projects. We have no IT projects that we funded over the last 5 cycles. So this is really our attempt to reach out to the group that we think has the best potential to benefit from this particular service. And just to mention that climate adaptation and mitigation is a key theme that the bank is really aiming to promote. So if you can consider projects that can impact or have positive implications on climate adaptation and mitigation, there it's a positive as well. So in terms of eligibility criteria, there are 5 of them. 1, as I mentioned, you have to have at least 4 participants in the cluster. I must mention that large firms, and large meaning your revenue is over 425 million Jamaican annually, cannot benefit from the grant itself, but they can still participate in the cluster. It could be a situation where maybe the large firm is who has the particular market and is working with small or medium-sized firms to create a particular service, and they're the channel to the market. So there's benefit. We come to them indirectly, but the actual grant funding will not go towards purchase of equipment, services that would benefit them directly. In every cluster, there would need to be a lead. We expect that all cluster members would work together, but we would like to identify a particular lead. That lead should have a minimum registration of 2 years in business in Jamaica. In terms of the types of projects, we're looking for things that are bringing some type of new product or service to a market, or maybe it's a new business model or a new business process. And I guess it can apply for service companies as well, where we import, I think, a number of these software packages or solutions. If this cluster can provide something in which we can get import substitution, so purchasing from a local product versus an imported one, there's definitely a plus for that. It needs to be valid TCC, and we have an exclusion list, which I'll bring up shortly, which we are unable or will not fund, and that's business activities that fall within our environmental and social exclusion list. I think I touched on that already. So this is the exclusion list. So it's something that we have on the website you can get access to, but if you are doing business or if your project is in any of these particular areas, we would not fund that particular project. So just some opportunities in IT that we think, and it's not limited to this, these are just some of the things that we see that could be useful. So some kind of decision support system for firms. So creating a product or a solution around that can be sold to whether it's companies locally, regionally, globally. That's something that we would support. Some type of fintech solution, again, is another one that we would, and cybersecurity products. So not limiting it to these three, but just saying that these three are some examples of what we would fund. I found some examples of, or thought of some examples of IT cluster projects. If you were to come together as a group of 4 of you to create smart labels that help with traceability for packaging, whether as in wines is the example that I found, but it could be beers locally, it could be any other product, to be honest. That would be a really good thing that we would be looking to see. IT solutions to improve agricultural production. So some type of, I guess maybe it's a suite of solutions that can help. Maybe it's weather predictability or soil testing or, proper food, nutrition for the plants and so forth. Those type of things we would really like to see integrated in our economy. And I think members of JTDA could really come together to put something together. And then maybe even some kind of fintech solution to improve how microfinancing is done in the industry. Again, just examples, but it's a wide range of things that I think you guys can put together as products to offer to the market. And nobody knows it better than you guys who are operating with clients at the moment and can identify solutions within the market. So how the application process works is we have a 2-step application process. The first one is really on first one is where you submit a concept note. So that gives us really a general idea of what the project is, who the members are, what kind of budget it probably looks like. That phase is currently open. That opened on Monday, the 18th of February, and it will close on the 25th of March. So just about a month is open for the concept notes. For those projects that pass the concept notes, we would invite them to submit a full application, which really gives us a lot more details on what the project would look like, what the outcomes would be, who the team members, how things will work, and so forth. So just have in mind that once you apply now, with this basic idea of what this thing would look like, we will require further information later on. We do offer consultancy support to clusters to complete the full application. So I would say all projects that pass the concept note, we will provide a financing for a consultant on a list that we have to help with the full application, also for them to help with the due diligence aspects as well. Just a bit on the concept note, there are really 4 sections. We want to understand what the cluster group looks like, who are the members, what are the roles. There's an eligibility criteria, which I mentioned and is on the application. What are the goals, outputs, outcomes of the project, and the description of the project. So what kind of problem you're solving, what kind of research has gone into it, how long it will last, budget, etc. Very simple and straightforward to complete the concept note, but I will say that we are really looking to see the logic to see whether this is something that meets our basic requirements for funding. This is an idea of the application timeline. So as I mentioned, February 8th is when we open the concept notes. And if you make it through the entire process, we would expect that June, just about June, is when we would be selecting. So we give 4 to 5 weeks each time for submissions. And then there's a 2-3 week evaluation process in between, which is what carries us to that point. In terms of expectations, each cluster should have a project manager, so somebody that's dedicated to ensuring that our obligations are met, hold you as cluster members accountable to deliver your respective roles. We will be monitoring the project against specific KPIs. We also expect reports for up to 2 years after the project has been completed to ensure, for us to understand the sustainability that takes place. We're not trying to just provide grant money into something and then it does not continue after the project time ends. The cluster must have a market for the solution. Not saying that we're not funding new operations, but the members of the clusters should already have a market, and it is through that which they identified a new market for their solution. So it is really critical that a market exists for what you are proposing. You must be able to show the necessary skills and experience to deliver on the particular solution or product. And within this project, we're looking at about an 8-month window from the start to the end of the particular project. And I will end there and open it for questions. Thank you.
Well, Chris, I was taking so much notes, but we certainly do have some questions. So I'm going to go through some of the comments that came in, and then I'll go back with my notes. All right. So earlier, let's start here. Just so everyone knows, the presentation will be made available on the JTDA's channels a little bit later. If not by this weekend, you can look for it early next week. All right. So let us start here. Is it that IT projects were previously funded because they didn't apply?
Yes, they didn't apply. I don't recall ever getting an IT project for.
So you're now targeting which areas you'd like to see more of this time around. Just for you to confirm.
Sorry, can you repeat?
So I'm saying you are specifically targeting these areas because you want to see more of them. Not sure. Are you hearing me, Chris?
Not hearing you.
I'm not. Well, is anyone else hearing me? All right, let me continue and see if you'll pick it up a little later on. Chris, can you hear me now?
Yes, better. Yes.
Oh, okay. No problem. So I was just confirming that it's a matter of you wanted to see more IT projects. That's why you're focusing on them for the 6th cohort. All right.
That's
Another, okay, a question here from Jamlight POS. Would there be any support in choosing best fit partners?
well. I would say that support wouldn't come from us. I think the JTDA is who can probably more help with facilitating those relationships between partners. As in, we want a team that comes together, that can work together. But I can't say I can help to identify who those partners would be.
Okay. All right. I see that Lashana answered a question there for Renate. All right. New build homes. Will we get a copy? Right. So the presentation will be made available on the JTDA's channels. Virginia says, would you support a training support center or an existing farm? She has two ideas that she's floating here.
Um, well, the question, so something I guess I probably should mention is that whatever activity you're doing, I'm expecting it's going to be income earning, right? So it should be generating additional revenues for each of the members. Training can be a component of a project, but it should be with increased productivity or increased output or an increased market share or entering into a market as the primary goal. So a training support center should be towards some end of improving, the production of peppers or something, so that there's better yield, so that more can be sold, right? So it
Something
would
like
be a
that.
means to an end and not a means in itself, right?
All right. Jamlight POS. Do all the partners have to be a local company?
Yes.
Yes, to that one. All right. But
We're
the
looking
market itself
for
could be
local.
local, regional, or global. Okay.
That's
So,
correct. That's correct.
all
So
right.
we want ideally local members of the JTDA to come together and provide a product or service for a market.
All righty. Another question here from Narda Ventura. Should all cluster members be private companies, or can we also team up with government agencies?
You can team up with government agencies. The government agencies would not benefit from the grant, but they could provide their contribution or services to the overall project. But we need at least 4 private sector entities to be part of the cluster. You could have 6, you could have 8,
Okay.
4 of which are public or NGOs, but at least 4 must be private.
Private companies. All right. Intelligent TV. What can the money be used for? And can it be used for staff costs of the project? If not, can it be used for consultants to build out said projects if the main cost is labor to build out software? So kind of just, because you did say
Um,
the project could be up to 450 in you're breaking out that. So we want you to have an idea of what can we use the grant money for.
right. So the funding can be used for, as I'm seeing the question here, whether consultants to build out the project of development, if it's software, right? So it's primarily labor is what is normally used, instead of, let's say, traditionally equipment to do processing for a particular product. So as long as whatever is an input to the final product, and it is critical for the product to be created, then the funding can go towards that. Yes.
All right. Okay, Sean. Let me see. Sabrina Hilton says, should the cluster already be in operation? So perhaps not the cluster, but all the entities. You
right.
go
So
ahead.
the entities in the clusters should be operational. It may not be the first. It may be the first time the cluster is coming together to work. That is fine. I will say that clusters that have an existing working relationship will likely score better than ones that have just come together. But there's nothing that excludes new clusters from being formed to take advantage of an opportunity, because maybe it's not something that has really been thought of, to do before. So we're really trying to encourage that.
All right, thank you. Horace Scarlett says, are any provisions made for educational institutions or members of? I guess educational institutions. It would probably relate to what you were saying earlier about the training.
Well, yeah, again, it depends on what the product or service is, right? And so, I don't know, a group of schools could come together to create a new, I don't know, examination council that gets you into Africa. I don't know, right? But a group of private educational institutions could come together to create a product or service where there is a market of people who want to venture into a particular area. So in that sense of an educational institution, of course, if the educational institution is providing training for a particular members of industry, it would go back to my first point of it should be a means to an end, right? There should be a product or service at the end of the day that we're getting out of it that enters into a particular market or is used to expand reach in a particular market. I hope that answers that question.
All right. Another one here in terms of NGOs, can they be a part of the cluster? Or does it have to be, private limited liability companies or proprietorships?
Yeah, as I think I mentioned before, they can be a part of the cluster in terms of will the grant go towards them. It depends on what activity they're doing. As in, they probably could be a service provider. And I would say in being a service provider, they probably wouldn't be a member of the cluster, but as I say, a supplier of service. And in such, they could be paid to provide a particular service. Maybe
all right, so
that's
depending
probably
on
the
where
best
they come in the value chain. All right.
Correct.
Henry's Farms, is the grant a reimbursement grant? And if it is, can you explain that?
There are different modalities. In the modality where there is a vertical relationship, so a main buyer of supplies, we reimburse. So let me phrase that another way. It's possible that the grant takes a reimbursable modality, and it's possible that it doesn't and it gets an advance. That depends on the construct of the supply chain and what the project is seeking to do. And there are not many different factors, but that is, I would say, determined more in the next phase after the concept note phase to determine where that direction goes. So for Henry's Farms, if they want us to run it as a reimbursable grant method, we have no objection doing that. If they need some other construct apart from a reimbursable grant method, then that's something that we can explore. So.
All right. Delton, I think we pretty much addressed your question a little earlier. I'm going to go down further to Kenton Roberts here. Do IT solutions geared towards providing DPO, which is Data Protection Officer Services, can they be funded? And under what has been shared?
Okay,
So this is,
so
IT-related services, yeah.
right. So if a group of DPO firms decide to come together to offer a service based on the Data Protection Act, then
So like from the security
it,
aspect,
it
and then the, providing the officer and person doing the implementation and checks, maybe a group of them, that could be
right,
something.
right. I can't say no, right? But I think it would be good to see what you guys come with. Again, we understand that the Data Protection Act has, let me call it, created a market.
Mhm.
And if I would say if a cluster of firms could come together and offer services, maybe it's at a greater economies of scale, it ensures that the cost to each of the SMEs or the firms out there is reduced versus going with one, then I think that's an excellent direction to go.
All right. You touched on this one a little bit earlier, but in terms of startups, will you accept applications from startups or a business that does not exist as yet?
The challenge on the startups aspect is their ability to prove that a market exists for the specific product. If they're able to do that, then it's something that will be considered. But I can say typically that is where the challenge will be, right? Because there is almost no track record of being able to deliver what you think you might, or there is no, kind of contract to say you gave me 5 of something last month. I want to now increase it to 100, right? You're really starting from zero, so I'm not even sure if you can deliver. But if you're able to express that to us, as I mentioned, it's something that can be considered.
Or even looking at a case study of even another company that went into our market previously. So it's based on how you really sell that concept note that will help to get
Right,
the project
right,
across the
right.
line. All right. If construction was proposed as a part of the project, say, to build a BPO building, would that qualify for the funding? So it could be
Sounds like a
IT.
hard no.
Why?
If the building was already built and a group of firms came together to provide the services to go into the BPO, then that's a different situation. But we're not building buildings with this money.
All right. So I know you were talking about the eligibility earlier. They must be Jamaican registered companies. But what if the international company has local operations?
I will stick to saying that Jamaican registered companies are those that are eligible.
Yes. All right. So Jamaican registered companies are eligible. All right. Michael Ennis. Does each cluster member need to have a separate market or contribute to one?
Well, ideally, it should be that we're going after. I'm assuming that the final product or service will be going after one market. So, if somebody does, and again, it's easy sometimes for me to go back into the product related for offering. So,
Mhm.
if somebody was selling pepper and somebody selling cassava, if it's going to the UK market of fresh foods, then I'm going to consider that one market. There are different products, but if one is going to the fresh food market one place and another is going to the processor market in another place, to be honest, it could also be qualify as well. As in, as long as there are markets that you're going to enter, I would think the stronger case would be that we're going into what we're contributing to one market. But if you can make the case for separate markets that will have the type of impact,
Mhm.
I hope it's not. my business is going to continue to do its thing and somebody else's business continue to do their thing. It should be a joint collaboration to achieve a joint goal. I think that's probably the best way for me to phrase that.
Okay, and if not, you really need to see the scale and impact for you to qualify.
Correct. We
Right.
want to
This
see
has
the
to do with
collaboration and the taking advantage of the joint resources to maximize an opportunity.
right. This one relates to eligibility as well. So you did say more than 4 can be a part of a cluster. But what if there are 5 cluster members, but only 2 are registered for over 2 years? Will those other 3 still allow the submission to go
If
forward?
I'm not mistaken, it is the lead needs to be registered for at least 2 years. So if one of the 5 members, you identify that one as the lead and that one has over 2 years, then the others don't necessarily have to. Yeah.
All right. Very good. I'll get to what else DBJ can offer a little later on in the question and answer segment. We defined the cluster earlier, but I don't know if you want to just quickly do it again for us, Chris.
Sure. So 2 different types of clusters. There's a horizontal cluster, which would be like similar firms operating, probably offering similar services that come together to take advantage of some market. So it's not necessarily that there's a buyer-seller relationship. It's more a shared service, shared output type of relationship. And then there's a vertical relationship where that's more of a buyer-seller relationship. So if you were typically buying services from graphic artists to have a final product and sell it, then that's more of a buyer-seller, which is more the vertical. So 2 different definitions. But again, you can go through the presentation when it gets uploaded to get a better sense of that.
All right. So Gizada Software says, if we have created a product and are in the pilot phase, can we use the grant to assist us with these pilot initiatives and commercialization activities or marketing when the pilot is over? Sounds like in that startup phase, and we were touching on it a little earlier.
Right. So ideally, and again, I would probably just mention that this is a competitive grant, meaning we're probably going to get like 30 applications and there are specific criteria and the best are who are going to be selected, right? So I can give you guidance on what would kind of put you to the top. If you've already piloted it and you've demonstrated that there's a market, that person going to score higher than somebody who is trying to get funding to do a pilot. So I think that's the best way for me to answer that.
Okay. About how many people are you looking to select? How many projects? How many, clusters will you have in that final phase?
That's a good question. It depends on how much money each asks for, but I think at the moment we have about 1.8 million US at the moment, so that's probably 6, 7. I think it probably will be around that.
Okay, so best of the best for sure. All right, going back to intelligence. Excellent. So does that mean? So it says, "Well, excellent. So does that mean you can say a staff member who gets paid $3 million already a year? We say he's going to dedicate 80% of the time towards that, so we can deduct the money there." So I guess this is in terms of the consultants that you might hire for a project.
Well, yeah. So let me express it. So let's say the project is 450,000 US, but with 70% of that, or I don't know if that math sound wrong, but whatever. We will put 300,000 and you have to put the other 150. That maths it off. But anyway, whatever you have to put, 50% of that can be in kind, the other 50 has to be in cash. So this 80% of 3 million that you deduct would only come on your in-kind contribution because you're already paying that staff member already to do their regular work. But there is a cash counterpart that the cluster would need to put up. And it's not just that we will value kind as your total contribution.
All right. Now, Chris, in terms of the kinds of projects and eligibility, as we're going to bring up back the slide that showed some of the breakdown, I noticed you had mentioned women-led clusters getting some, I don't want to say preferential treatment, but why is that even a consideration? Share a little bit on that.
So I would say in the DBJ's operations, in terms of products that we've offered, we recognize that women-led, women-owned businesses don't seem to participate as much. And I'll just start from the application process, not talking about just who gets selected at the end of it. And we're really trying to encourage our women-owned businesses to take advantage of some of these opportunities. I think very often there is this kind of shyness to go after it, or maybe, maybe it's lack of awareness. So we're really trying to see if this can be a way to get the word out about the products that women-owned businesses should be encouraged to really participate and offer your services and products to the market.
Okay. All right. And we're going to take the question here from Constance and bring up back a slide that Chris presented on. Could you explain more about the percentage that the cluster needs to have? I believe you mentioned you will only fund about 70%. So we're going to wait for a slide to come up so you can break that down a little bit more for us as well. Or you can start leading, Chris, and then as the slide comes up.
Yeah, all right. So let me use 100,000 as the as a simple example. If you have a project, 4 of you in the cluster, you have a project that costs 100,000 US. You can get access to a grant of 70% of that, which is 70,000 US. The remaining 30% needs to come from the cluster. That 30%, 50% of it, so half of it, can be in kind. So your time, maybe existing equipment that you have, those things can be valued in kind. And then the remaining 50%, or really 15%, $15,000 out of the 100,000 would need to come in as cash towards the activities that have been outlined in the project. And as I mentioned, 300,000 is the max. So whatever 70% of that gives you 300,000 would need to be the total amount of that project, for which some of your contribution can be in kind, but the remaining portion must be in cash.
Okay, so just a reminder to everyone that the phase 1 application is now open and it ends on March 25th. But somebody's asking who will be assessing these concept notes in the first part of the application stage. This is from Oreen Gray.
Right, the first batch, I'm not mistaken, would be by but let me probably go with the broadest group. So it would be a combination of DBJ team as well as some external evaluators that we have brought as part of the team. So industry experts, who will help to guide us in selecting. So I'll give you the widest group, which would be a combination of both, but it could be a smaller subset of that. Yes.
All right. Another question here from Intelligent TV. Can you submit multiple projects, as your IT firm could end up being a horizontal cluster in 2 or more ideas? And if so, is there a chance that you could be accepted for both?
I heard this question, someone asked me this question earlier today, and I told them that you can submit more than one project. I feel like maybe we need to put a limit on that, because I don't want to have to go through 4 different intelligent projects, right? But
suppose
if they're great, then they're great. Because at the end of it, we will only select one. So I think that can be the guidance. So if for example, intelligent is a part of a horizontal cluster, and they also submit for a vertical cluster where they are leading. There will be a point, let's say we like both projects, Intelligent would need to pick which one of the two sides they're on. They won't be funded as a lead of one and a member of another.
Okay.
Right. And I guess a similar construct, if they submit two vertical projects, we will only select them for one. We will only fund one if it gets to that point.
Okay, thank you for that clarification there. Let me see. All right. Okay. What is the success of your previous clients? I'm not sure. In terms of, because you said this is a sixth round that you'll be doing this particular project.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example of, a standout from previous cohorts?
Yeah. One that comes to mind is a lobster supply chain project that we did, where, so I guess it would be a vertical construct. So there's a firm that purchases lobsters from fisher folk, and they basically assisted the fisher folk to retrofit the boats so that they are able to catch and sell live lobster instead of dead lobster, which fetch a higher price by, I think it's about 60% higher price. So it allowed the fisher folk to really improve efficiency. So it's like the same tool that they would use of their boat, but instead of catching lobsters at themselves for $2,000, them can sell them for $5,000, for example, right? With just a tweak in the tool that is being used. So that I think was a very successful project, which added value to not just the main buyer, who now can fetch a higher price for their live lobster, but also the suppliers, who are also getting a higher price for their product. So just overall efficiency and value in that particular supply chain. Again, what we've traditionally funded, or the constructs that we've gotten, have been vertical in agriculture. I can't give an example of services because we have never received one. It has always been product, right? There was another project related to furniture, really improving the efficiency of furniture that is made instead of handcrafting actual machinery and technology that can increase how fast furniture is made and the quality and so forth. So those are two examples I'll probably leave. Really want to get a standout from the services sector, which shows that Jamaica needs to be looked upon for these types of activities, right? Like creative industries is something that we want to see a project out of as well. And we're here talking to IT because we think that's a key one that can bring value.
There's a particular slide where you did list some of the areas that you're looking for. So our team is going to bring that up. But before we do that, Sabrina Hilton also asked another question in terms of, does it have to be an LLC or can it be a sole trader? In terms of the types of registered.
Registered with the Companies Office of Jamaica. I think there are 3 different registration types. So
yes.
Registered.
So not this particular slide, but there's one in particular where you listed some other ideas. So you listed information technology, agriculture, tourism, climate adaptation and mitigation, and you just said the creative industries as well. This one, yes.
Right. So I think this is probably this one. Yeah. So again, we've gotten agriculture. We've gotten agriculture linked to tourism. We've gotten some kind of tourism. I think it was more like creative in the craft and so forth linked to tourism. We've never had anything in information technology, and I think the two we've supported related to climate adaptation have been in agriculture. So again, really trying to pull some other project ideas out, because I think you guys see opportunities but maybe don't have the time or the resources to put towards it because you're doing your regular activities. I think we're saying it's possible that if 5 of you feel that way and have 20% extra that you can put towards something, if everybody has put their 20% extra, that can create that can take advantage of an opportunity, right? Many times I think we have to do it on our own, and that limits where you can go and what you can do, right? So that's what we promote.
All right. There is a point that you had mentioned about reporting. So once a project is successful, you're saying each project still needs to have a project manager that is appointed. You did mention that earlier in your presentation, and that even up to 2 years after you expect to get reports. Elaborate on that a little bit as to the reason why. That question came from Christopher Derrill. In a nutshell.
Right. Tell me if you're hearing me.
We are. Yep.
Yes, I can just go ahead. Yes, each project needs to have a project manager. What we've learned over time is that when people have their regular business, and there's no dedicated person assigned to managing this particular project, it's difficult for us to monitor it. So we are saying that it is mandatory that a project manager is assigned to liaise with us, as well as to coordinate with the members of the cluster, ensure activities are being delivered, help to process disbursement so that we can pay based on activities, and you have paid what you're supposed to pay, and all of that, because it is a full-time job to manage a complex program or project, and trying to get somebody to double up to do it who isn't their sole focus has been detrimental to us in the past. So that's where we're coming from with that.
All right. And we are going to be wrapping shortly. But in terms of the BIGEE project, the overarching project that you're responsible for at the DBJ, how do we get more information or read up online, or what's the website that we start the applications? Are you hearing me, Chris? In terms of the
You're breaking up a bit, but I think you're asking about the other programs.
No, where do we go to find out information and start the application process online?
Okay, thanks for that. I'll ensure it is in the slide. I'll ensure it is there, but thinkbigee.com. So think BIGEE.com. You can search on the website for Jamaica Business Fund. It will pop up as a page that tells you where you got to apply. This PowerPoint that we have, I'll just ensure that the link directly to that page is included
there as well. And I think we're going to close off there. Christopher Brown, Program Manager for the BIGEE program with the Development Bank of Jamaica. We want to say thank you so much. We got some riveting questions, some of them repeated, some of them I had to skip, but I'm sure once you see the presentation in full online, all of your questions will be answered. And Chris also mentioned that there is room for his office to kind of help to guide some of the presentations that are going to be the submissions that will be coming in. So once again, on behalf of the Jamaica Technology and Digital Alliance and the membership, thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to the exciting submissions that will be made. All right, at this time, I'm going to invite the program manager of the JTDA,
Thank
Alexia
you.
Beckford, to come and give her closing remarks.
Right. Good afternoon again, everyone. Mr. Brown, thank you so much for giving us this insightful information about the Jamaica Business Fund webinar. I hope many persons were taking notes and will apply. We want to see more members applying for these grants, these initiatives, right? And we hope to see you forming your clusters. I think how you can apply. We have put the comments on where you can apply, and the recording will also be made available. In case you missed it or you missed sections of it, the recording will be made available for you to review. But as we speak on highlighting, so we once again want to thank the DBJ, want to thank our host, Amashika Lauren, as well. But I just want you to remember that this next week coming up, Thursday, February 29th, is our annual journal meeting and the election of officers. Yes, a new board is coming in, and this is an important time for you to showcase your voice in electing members to the board. At these members, the board will emphasize or direct the vision of the IT community, or where we want to go, or who you want to see. So it is very imperative that you think about your president, your deputy president, the members of the board who will help shape the organization and its future. We look forward to seeing you 6 p.m. at Jampro for the AGM and the board, the election of our upcoming board, right? So the nomination forms are out. It's still open if you're thinking that you wish to apply, or you would like to recommend everyone. We just want to remind you that you have to be a paid up member. So guiding you that you'll be a paid up member, we have sent newsletters. More newsletters will be out. So we ask that you come out and you vote for your for the person who will help to move the organization in the direction you see fit. I also want to add as well that we have the Fireside Chat TikTok Tuesdays is back. We are going to learn about optimizing your business using AI to increase productivity. We have our featured speaker, Leary Hercules, and that will be February 27th, just 2 days before the election. And we hope to see you. We want to see your impact. We've heard we are giving you more stuff. We want to see you growing, want to see you applying for these grants and these initiatives. We have so much more taking place, and we want to say a big thank you for joining. We want to say thank you for Mr. Brown and you, our members, who make all of this possible. So once again, we look forward to seeing you at our AGM and the election of the board, Thursday, February 29th at 6 p.m. Jam Pro. We want to see you participating. We're eager to have you. We'll also be having Tech Talk Tuesdays, February 27th. We're going to learn about optimizing your business for AI featuring Leary Hercules. So if you're a bit standoffish with AI, you're going to learn so much more. And we're the Jamaica Technology and Digital Alliance, where we are providing access, influence, and employment through technology. Thank you all so much for joining.